April 29th, leaving Puerto Vallarta.
Breaking down at the penthouse we wound up staying out and getting ready to hit the road. First stop was going to be a town called Mascota. We actually stayed closer to Nueva Vallarta, which is a little bit north of Puerto Vallarta. So this is actually entering from Nueva Vallarta into Puerto Vallarta, where you enter the great state of Jalisco. Guadalajara is in the state of Jalisco. So from this point through the end of the day, we're in the same state in Mexico. It's still somewhat tropical as you're kind of heading due east from Vallarta. We decided to take this really scenic route. And actually, when we were doing our safety meeting and pre-planning before we left, we'd identified this as a good possibility, or option B, as opposed to taking the main highway. We asked a lot of the truck drivers on the ferry, countless other people about this route. Some people warned us, said it was really slow going, really mountainous, really curvy, which it was. Other people warned us about like landslides and road closures. People even said there's the possibility of running into like real life banditos. We said a la brava and decided to go this route, and we were all very, very glad that we did. This is getting towards the summit. If I believe correctly, we're about to cross a big long bridge here. The view off to the right is phenomenal. A serious amount of climbing from sea level up into the pass to get over the mountains and drop down into some of the valleys. I've actually been up here a time or two before. There's a very cool like old school coffee plantation further up in the mountains off to the left, and there's these phenomenal antennas you can go to on the very top of a peak just beyond this town called San Sebastian del Este, and the view is absolutely spectacular. It's so high and so steep that the clouds hit you and then pass over your head, so you're looking on top of the clouds and amongst the clouds. But the ride out there, this route, very curvy, very hilly, just a fantastic morning of riding.
And you'll see the further we travel on this road, it kind of starts looking like a pine forest versus the jungle. You'll start seeing pine trees, and the altitude, my guess was like 8,500 feet, which is 30 something hundred meters. I don't know off the top of my head, but somewhere in there.
Off to the left there, that's a little spot where you can kind of stop and sample a bunch of tequilas. Didn't stop on this trip. Too early in the morning for tequila. No breakfast tequila on this morning. I would say the outside temperature was in the high 60s, kind of fluctuated. In Vallarta, it was about 80 or something like that. But as we got into the mountains, it got definitely noticeably cooler.
The road's pretty rough in this little section.
Push guys up.
You get fuses and then they're not even the right size.
Yeah, but they'll still fit.
First mini little breakdown. One of the bikes had a pretty large pothole, and it caused something to short out, and it looked like it blew a fuse.
These old harnesses, GTS 250s are kind of known for not having good harnesses. You can see, I taped it up originally, but it rubs on this little peg here. And it's like a common problem. There's been scooters that have gotten whole harnesses because of this issue, but I think it pretty much shorted one of the wires in there. I can't see. You can obviously see that one that's got copper right there. Can't really see it, but
Yeah, I see it.
so it shortened something. And I suspected because the fan one time at one point was coming on for no reason, and the fan's controlled by wiring that's all controlled by this, so it's wiring that's all in here. Other thing is these clips. This bike's got 40-something thousand miles on it. This clip came off, so we'll put a zip tie, kind of jerry rig it. You want to keep the harness away from the exhaust pipe.
Did you get the fuses out already? Anybody?
I don't know where they are. Yeah. So there's our blown fuse. At least I think we came to our conclusion of what the problem is right away. So that's good. We're gonna do only the best thing you do is put a bigger fuse in here and see if any wires start smoking. If it blows right away, we're kind of like, uh-oh. We got more tearing down to do, but right now the wiring kind of loose. Didn't hear it blow yet. Fuel pump on. Yeah. Wiggling. No blowing fuses, no cutting out. I'm just gonna tape it up and hope for the best. And we'll maybe buy more fuses just to have them in spares.
Robot successfully diagnosed and did the repair, and we're back on the road to Mascota. What exactly did happen on that again, Robot?
Well, pretty much the road was a little rough, and I was like, oh, big pothole. And unfortunately, I kind of stared at the pothole and hit it. It was a pretty good sized pothole. I actually, it was just the rear tire that caught it. I kind of got the front wheel around it, and it didn't damage the rim. You could see kind of a rubber scuff where it smushed the tire so much on the rear that kind of scuffed the rim just a little bit, but didn't damage the rim anyway. But the problem with my scooter is it's has a wiring harness that has like 50,000 miles on it, and I kind of fixed it up a little bit. The 250 GTS is kind of notorious for having a not so good quality wiring harness. The 300s, they improved it greatly, but there's a little spot on the engine, you know, the water pump case that rubs on the wiring harness, and it rubbed through, and just hitting the big pothole caused one of the wires to short out, and it blows the fuse. There's a 10 amp fuse that protects the fuel pump, the ignition circuit, and the fuel injection circuit. So that happened to be the wire that was shorted, and I identified it right away, taped up the wires, put a new fuse on it, and the scooter was fine for the rest of the ride.
As mentioned, this is definitely the road less traveled for getting to Vallarta to Guadalajara, significantly longer in time. Kind of warned of landslides. This is a big one on the right. You can see it didn't affect our travel, but you can see the land, how it kind of slipped well into the shoulder. We probably passed about a half dozen of those. None of them really slowed us down, but you can definitely tell that this is the less traveled and less traversed road. Hence the bumps, potholes that took Robot Scooter out momentarily a few miles back. But just look at the changing landscape. We went from jungle in Vallarta up to the top of the mountain, and this is kind of the descent, and you can kind of see the pine forest, awesome hairpin curves. It kind of reached that form of like riding Zen or riding Nirvana, where everybody was well lined up, riding nice and tight, and just kind of fighting through the cold. Low 60s at this time, but just having an awesome morning of riding as we're entering into this valley and this old school town of Mascota. Speaking of the valley, this is kind of in the heart of the valley. There were some pretty fertile farmlands. We passed a lot of cattle and livestock in the road. You can kind of tell these are two guys in pickup trucks that hadn't seen each other in a bit. This is how they kind of stopped and conversed, but on a road this infrequently traveled, it's all good, no problem. But there was a few spots that like were selling fresh cheese, like out of the ranches and stuff like that, lots of cattle. And this is entering into Mascota. You can see the asphalt ends, and it's old school cobblestone. Jar your fillings loose for a good probably 4 or 5 kilometers, I would say.
Yeah, it was pretty good. I'm sure glad it wasn't raining, because cobblestone, scooters, and rain, not a good combination. I'd rather ride in the dirt.
And there was times during this morning where we got a few light raindrops here and there. And it had rained the day before, and I believe it rained probably later in the afternoon and potentially the next day. This is a little ahead of the rainy season. I think the rainy season in this part of Mexico is June, July, and August, where they kind of get daily downpours. But you can kind of see it took a little bit of navigating through town. For the most part, you just kind of try and head straight, stay straight. There's the occasional sign. We pulled over a couple times to check it out, but it was actually a pretty fun stretch. Very comprehensive hardware store on the left. I think that we all probably would have wished that we might have stopped and explored it a little bit, but we knew we had to get to Guadalajara. We still had a long ways to go, so we just kind of jettisoned through and kept on going. Who's filming right here? Is this on? That was on Scott's camera?
That's right.
Robot's camera?
Mm-hmm.
And this is where the cobblestone ends. We're back to asphalt on the outside of Mascota. Had a very beautiful archway straight ahead. You can kind of see there that welcomed you to town and said "see you later" at the same time, depending on the direction.
The gardeners were like trimming all the brush around the sign, kind of just keeping it up.
With machetes and a couple weed whackers. So Mascota, like we said, is in the heart of that little valley. So this is exiting Mascota, and there was another bit of a hill climb, and they actually had a posted mirador here on the right. So we kind of slammed on the brakes and decided to take a quick peek. That down there is those cobblestone roads we just came through. That's like the heart of like the village of Mascota. And up in the distance, those are the mountains that we climbed up from sea level, up and then over from Vallarta. I have no clue what the altitude is. I would guess that it's at least a few thousand feet, probably. Not sure where we're going after from here, but I think we have a little bit more up and down to do before we get to Guadalajara. But there's an awesome view, and you kind of see once we got out of the mountains over there, we came up through that valley. A lot of farmlands and ranches and stuff like that. Probably some pretty fertile land, I would say.
Beautiful.
All right, so I got ahead of everybody to capture this little curve here. Just happened to get that Volkswagen Bug going the opposite direction. Kind of cool. You see a lot of, I guess they're not necessarily vintage Volkswagen Bugs, because they made them up until the 90s, if I recall. But there's a lot of air-cooled Volkswagen products in Mexico, all of Mexico. They have a lot of love for the Volkswagens. Actually, our final destination, Puebla, is where one of the largest Volkswagen factories is located in Mexico. Many of the products that are sold in North America are actually made at that factory, such as the modern-day Jetta. Again, I kind of got ahead of everybody, just kind of capturing everybody in these windy roads, you know. And I don't know, I've always liked windy roads. You know, I take my motorcycle up into all the mountainous roads in San Diego, and anywhere I get to explore a new windy road, doesn't matter what I'm on, I always enjoy it and pick up the speed a little bit. And no big deal, you know, the road's a little rough, but you know, definitely safe. You know, I think at that point I was doing about 75, 80 miles an hour with the scooter. Keep in mind our 250 scooters are essentially built as 300s with the Melosi cylinder head and cylinder. They're quite quick when you get on the throttle. And you feel them bog down a little bit with altitude. You know, of course, that kind of affects any engine.
If you look at kind of the ever-changing landscape, it's pretty phenomenal in this stretch. You know, just 2 hours before we were in a jungle, entering the mountains, the highlands. We're kind of in this plateaued area here. You can see there's forests off to the left and right. We were kind of chasing colder weather and cloudy skies, but look how crystal clear the sky is at this particular point in time during the day. This was just sensational riding all day long. Look at that peak. There's also a lot of, per the Lonely Planet book, lots of volcanic activity in this area. Not necessarily active volcanoes, but lots of volcanic rock. And I think a lot of those ridges and peaks are basically like either dormant or once active volcanoes in some capacity. Lots of up and down. You can see we're hitting a nice downhill stretch here. We're getting into about 1 or 2 in the afternoon. There went some federales past us. It's about time to stop and grab some lunch on the side of the road. All right, so here we are. ¿Cómo se llama este pueblo?
Atenguillo.
Atenguillo. Con esa mujer, ¿cómo te llamas?
Vente por acá tú.
Está ocupada. Blanca con Blanca. Ella está haciendo instrucciones a hacer tortillas. This is Luis. Explícale a la cámara. ¿Lo viste el papel? Habla.
Ahí está mi tortilla. Aquí lo que tenemos que hacer es que salga lo más entera posible, despacio. Y para colocarla aquí tiene su ciencia, tiene su chiste. Tiene que deslizar ligeramente. Ah, ya la cagué. ¿Cómo se puede liberar este de aquí ya no, verdad?
No, ya se
Ya.
puede.
Todo.
En cuanto lo eche, se le pone así, yo hago por soplate.
You get one chance to put it down like that. This is much better than mine. Here's my tortilla. That was my attempt. And look at my hands too.
It's still
Son buenos.
Está cruda, le falta todavía. Tiene que tener este bronceado. Sí. Te falta ahí una vez más. ¿Ya está lista ahora? Para dar la primera vuelta.
Esta sí.
Ahora.
Allá todavía esa le falta.
Mine's slow cooking. So yours are ready to flip over? And those are the quesadillas.
Tiene que ser en 3 vueltas.
We finished an awesome lunch and we asked our hosts at the restaurant on the side of the highway, where should we grab some paletas, Mexican style popsicles? Again, we're in the town of Atenguillo. They recommended we go into the center of town, El Centro, as is case here with the main church straight ahead, and get paletas from one Doña Lupe. Her establishment was up there on the right. We were not disappointed. Better down here, huh? Oh. Not a rat race. Oh, yeah, you're right. There's the maestra of the popsicles off to the left as we panned away. Her establishment had been there for 100 years, and she'd been running it for the last 50 years. Pretty phenomenal. But again, the road from the center of town out to the main highway, a lot of cobblestone. This is actually the Sony Action Cam facing backwards, I believe on Scott's scooter. It was mounted to the helmet. And this is that same road out, but with the camera facing forward. So believe it or not, that's the same stretch of roadway. We're gonna continue straight for a little bit. We're gonna see the sign that welcomes you and thanks you for visiting Atenguillo, and we're gonna be back on the highway shortly. There's Atenguillo there, and straight ahead is the roundabout that directs you off the highway and into town. Cool, cool little town.
Yeah, something about that town is everybody had birds in cages, and in that town center, you can hear all the birds in the cypress trees or whatever they were in that town center. It's kind of neat. I liked it.
Here's a shot where Robot kind of sped ahead and got us coming out of this turn. Look at that sky in the background.
At this point, we're traveling down, towards Guadalajara. Keep in mind, Guadalajara, I think, is still at 5,000 or 6,000 feet elevation, so we don't drop all the way to sea level, but we're going downhill, hitting a little bit of rain. Nothing, no torrential downpours where we had to pull over and put rain gear on, just a little bit, probably for 15 minutes.
We just pushed ahead. You could see off to the left, the skies looked really, really ominous, but you could see that blue or lighter sky ahead of us, so we just kept pushing on. There's some of the speed bumps. The way they're kind of set up is they give you a dozen or so warning speed bumps, then you hit the big speed bump. But this is actually entering into the outskirts of Guadalajara. We stopped and got gas just before rendezvousing with Armando of the Vespinos. His nickname is Arki. We stopped and got gas. Robot's bike was running a little weird. He kind of did a couple little checks and diagnostic things on that. More on that to follow. Jesus was in charge of communication, so he'd been in contact with Arki about a rendezvous point, and I think we actually zipped past him on the roadway. So we kind of pull off to the right here, and here comes one of the first Vespas we've seen since leaving San Diego. One of, maybe the first.
No, second, we ran into Jaime.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
So all of our hosts are Vespa hosts, the way it should be. Vespa trip, Vespa host. He's coming in here on his espresso brown GTV 300. What's up, Arky? All right, so we're rolling into Guadalajara. Armando's taking us on a tour. We do do a couple laps around this very famous fountain here that's in the middle of this massive statue. You can see the green plants on the side. That's agave. That's where the source of tequila. So they kind of pay homage to that. So this is very typical of what you'll see kind of throughout Guadalajara. So we're going to do a couple loops around that. I think we're going to head to the more historic old part where the big cathedral is and continue on with the mini tour. A mini tour! Seguimos. Scooters are still doing pretty good. The roads have been the bounciest and bumpiest, like entering into Guadalajara from about like 45 kilometers out. Karen's rack has shifted a full 20. Robot's having some minor issues with his bike. The check engine light came on. Kind of playing around, troubleshooting that. I think that might be good. For the most part, we're just kind of cruising. ¿Qué onda, Jesús?
Hola. Parece que ya llegamos a Guadalajara. Nuestro viaje ha sido un éxito. Ahorita nos están dando un mini tour, así que seguimos y platicamos más adelante.
Look at that color matched yellow car. That's what I'm talking about. That's synchronicity right there. Not with us, despite the fact that it's got the same yellow of Pacifico, the Cerveza del Pacifico. But this is that glorieta on the left there, and see those little plants all over in that reddish brown field? That is baby agave. That is the source of the nectar of the Mexican gods. That's right, baby. Tequila comes from those beautiful plants. Continuing on a little bit further, we're entering into what used to be the historic and ancient entrance and exit to the city. The right side was the entrance, the left side was the exit, and this used to be way on the outskirts of Guadalajara, dating back to the 1600s. Now Guadalajara has grown so much that both roadways head the same direction and they head straight into the center of town. But these are pretty awesome structures. At one point in time, you could actually go up to the top. So here we are, the hustle and the bustle, the heart of it all. This is the main cathedral in el centro de Guadalajara. We did some lane splitting working our way up here. Got a little chopped up. Robot about 2 blocks back wound up getting in front of everybody and going underneath the tunnel. He wound up about 6 miles on the other side of town, most conveniently in the red light district. Fortunately, Armando went and saved the robot. We asked about doing a tour in this tequila bottle. Decided we're not going to do it, we'll just do our own tour. But in the melee of robot getting ahead of everybody, we had a little minor kiss of another mirror on Karen's bike, so we got to document that, of course. So what happened, Karen? You gotta say it happens.
Changed and embarrassed. They were lane splitting, and I let's see, on the left side I bumped a lady's mirror, which retracted easily, but it
jarred her.
And then I hit the other guy's mirror.
So a little tick tick.
And the impact here is what busted her.
Not bad, all things considered.
There's a little bit of scrape on the leg shape, eating a little scrape on the bumper. I'm fine. The guy was fine. It sort of pushed us back into place.
A little, 500 peso payoff and everything was fine. It's equivalent to $35, so that's how it should be done. Handshake and forget about it. The one thing that was cool is we got here and we saw other motorbikes on the sidewalk, one of the busiest corners probably in all of Guadalajara. We just kind of pulled up and followed suit, and we're immediately met by one of these officers. This is actually the official federal government building for all of the state of Jalisco. We were met by one of the armed guards immediately, thinking he was going to give us a bit of a hard time, ask us to do. Not the deal at all. He was just interested in where we were coming from and made sure that if we were going to stage and take pictures, that we would have had a proper permit for it. But he just basically said we could park wherever, leave the bikes, everything was cool. But so now that we're reunited, we're going to get back on the bikes, head across through town here to Armando's place, get unloaded, and then come back out and do some more exploring for tonight. But as of 7 o'clock p.m. on Wednesday, we are in Guadalajara. We continued on our mini tour. We found Robot. Karen was fine despite the fact that she clipped the mirror and had the little mishap. Arky, as an architect, has done a lot of awesome work throughout Guadalajara, and this was one of his first and largest public works projects. He basically redesigned this entire square. It's called La Reforma, named after a small revolution that happened here some time ago. I don't remember the exact year, sorry. There's some cool history though with newspapers being here. The building across the street was the home of the oldest and largest newspaper in Guadalajara, and the building behind us that you can kind of see, the yellow one in the sunlight, that's the home of the current largest newspaper. There was a cool statue of a guy in bronze sitting on a bench seemingly reading the newspaper. This is an old house that Archie explained to us was built in the 1700s. This is about 3 or 4 blocks behind the La Reforma Plaza that he remodeled. All right, here we are. We're in the official garage of the Vespinos, Armando's personal garage. Robot is actually installing a rear turn signal kit right now. He has to put the resistor pack in so he can get rid of the US spec, changing the flash base so you can get rid of the US spec bolt-on ugly turn signals and put the flush-mounted European ones in there. Armando installed those, but couldn't get the flash thing figured out. So we had to come all the way down here to lend him a hand. That's the least we can do in exchange for all the hospitality. Thanks, Karen, for having a hairbrush in your glove box. That's pretty cool.
Trying to help you out any way I can.
But we should check and take a look at some of the scooters you got. There's an old Red LD. This scooter is big and black. Not sure about.
This is my big scooter.
That's a scooter grande. This is a PX 200 or 150?
Yes.
200, 200. Wow. Esa yo quiero comprar. Es un Helix, Honda Helix, super low mileage and original. See if it starts.
You have to put in the rear foot brake. All the way
Maybe the side stands down. I can tell it was going to start.
No necesitas acelerar.
No. We're good. I'm sure it runs. What else? Look at this little Vespa. This is the su niño electro bike. Yeah. That's pretty cool. He says that the Vespinos actually get together at least once a month. I want to take all the cars out. And this is a club hangout where they do barbecue and stuff in here and have meetings. You can see he's an architect. Everything's kind of well thought out, master plan. He's got his restroom back here for all the club guys. Crib style, you always got to check out the restroom. What more do you need? But so the clubs for them down here, it's like the whole family comes. So he's just explaining that it's like, you know, the mother, like the wives, the children, everybody comes once a week, just kind of have a good kind of hangout. They say they do them at least monthly. But that's it. This is the official headquarters of the Vespinos in Guadalajara. Uno, dos, tres. Viva! All right, so this scene is pretty awesome. Loading the bikes up, we decided to cheat out a little bit, and instead of riding all the way to Mexico City and then on to Puebla, which you've heard is a little on the boring, grueling side unless we do a more scenic route, we've taken the easy road. And we're gonna rest the nalgas, and we're gonna load the bikes in the back of this truck. But check it out, we got a Jeep Cherokee 4x4, about a 92, 93. That's a temporary bar. We rode over here, we took all our personal stuff off. Here's all the Vespinos. Vespinos, ¿qué onda? ¿Cómo estamos? Gracias. A ustedes todos. So we're checking it out. We got all the bikes. Cheers. Cyber. Es la compa de roba, Cyber. So we got the loading going on, right? Our bike's gonna be the last ones in. They hooked us up, giving a special deal. Only charges less than another club rate to get the bikes in here. Check out this loading ramp. The guardrail right here. This is beautiful, dude. It's pretty awesome. They got a pretty huge team back here. Loading bikes. Pretty awesome. And then so the bikes get loaded in here. We're gonna help tie them down if they need our help. And then the best part is we take an overnight bus ride with all these crazy vatos locos, drinking the whole way, all the way to Puebla. Una vez, one trip.
Tomando y tomando y tomando.
El portugués. Ahí va el burro. Una, dos, tres. Arriba, arriba. Last scooter in, the Sprint 150. It's lifted because there wasn't enough room to physically roll it in straight. This 53-foot trailer was packed. I want to say there was like 28 scooters all told, something to that effect. Took a lot of shuffling around to get them all in there, and this is the final one entering the trailer. See ya in Puebla.